You know what gets me about the men's rights movement? It's completely futile. Allow me to explain why. The men's rights movement isn't about men's rights, it's about fighting feminism. Now they claim they are fighting for men's rights by proxy of fighting against feminism, since feminism is the one and only factor that has harmed men's well-being. Feminism, by the way, is not the only thing that disadvantages men, but I'm not gonna go there right now. Anyhow, they claim they fight feminism, but they don't. What part of feminism do you people fight? Do you fight against married women's right to own property? Do you fight against women's right to vote? Do you fight against the provision for them in the 1964 Civil Rights Act, that made it illegal for government and large corporations to openly discriminate against people on the basis of race, religion, sex, and sexual orientation? Well, I think the more extreme-ended libertarians actually are against the 1964 Civil Rights Act. But my point here is, if you are not going to fight to remove the laws granting women a lawful right to an education, a lawful right to employment, the lawful right to own property, and their right to vote, you're not even really fighting feminism, you're merely fighting some aspect, some portion of feminism, but you're not fighting feminism in its entirety, since you men's rights activists, who do not fight for men's rights, but only fight against feminism, but not the core out of feminism, let me ask you, what part of feminism are you even fighting? It would seem to me the part of feminism that is being fought is the louder, more over-the-top Tumblr-style feminists, those who cry about a rape culture, call everything rape, recite the wage gap myth, bitch about being victims of systematic gendered violence because guys whistle at them and say hello beautiful as they walk down New York sidewalks. Somewhere out there is a Muslim woman listening to these feminists, having to cover up from head to toe, and requiring a male escort to be allowed to step out of the house, who is totally sympathetic to the oppression of a woman in a bikini being told hello beautiful. And some of you may be thinking I am pulling that dictionary definition of feminism just being about sexual equality, and claiming not all feminists are like that. But no. That is not my argument. We all know that the description in the dictionary does not add up to the cult of misandry we see from modern feminists. And we all know that not all feminists are like that. Argument is completely rubbish. Oh, it's true. Not all feminists are like that. For example, not all feminists support that law in California where a man has to get consent to kiss, then consent to hug, then consent to place his hand on a woman's left breast, then consent to touch the right breast, then consent to remove the bra, then consent to kiss the breasts, then consent to place his hand on her ear end, and then every 15 seconds he has to be given verbal consent to ensure that consent hasn't been retracted. Whatever that crazy fucking law that ends up making every act of sex an act of rape. Sure, not all feminists support that. But that doesn't change the fact that the feminists that are like that, got that law passed. The feminists crying not all feminists are like that are guilty by association. They are enablers, they act as shields for the feminists who are like that. There are feminists who are like that. And then there are the feminists who shield them from criticism by reminding you not all feminists are like that and then citing the dictionary definition. So, I'm certainly not pulling an fault, nor am I doing the check the dictionary retort. But what I am saying is, are you even really and truly anti-feminist if you are not against women's property rights, right to vote, and right of equal access to education and employment? Again, if you are not against those three fundamental pillars of feminism, just how anti-feminist are you? What aspect of feminism is it that you are against? I'm going to go out on a limb and answer for you, and feel free to correct me if I am wrong, but I think the part of feminism you are against is the misandry. Women claiming that women everywhere live their lives in fear of men, is misandry, and you fight that. They claim every move a man makes is rape, and you fight that. Okay, well, if this is what you are fighting, then you are effectively just fighting misandry. And by the way, fighting misandry is a good thing. I fully support fighting misandry, and it's certainly the aspect of feminism that I am fighting against. But here's the twist. Misandry isn't exclusively found in feminism, it's found all over the place. Heck, it's even found in the men's rights movement. Look how often self-proclaimed MRAs call other MRAs and MGTOW misogynist. Every time you accuse a man of misogyny, you are trying to silence him from speaking out against women in ways you deem unfit. Well, that, gentlemen, is actually misandry. Women being free to speak even the most revolting things about men, but men having to walk on eggshells so as to not offend some woman's hypersensitive ears, is misandry. You shaming other men with the accusation of misogyny just like the feminists do, is an act of misandry. You are contributing to the shaming and silencing of men. Every time an MRA accuses another MRA or MGTOW of holding a belief because you just can't get laid, that MRA is actually being a misandrist. Your first clue that it is misandry is that it is verbatim a feminist argument to silence men. And here you are using their tactic to shame men into silence. In what goddamn way do you think you differ from a male feminist? You fight against MGTOW, claiming that our theory of gynocentrism is just like the feminists using patriarchy, and realize, you MRA types blame every ill of mankind on cultural Marxism. So remind me how you differ? So let's recap. Men's rights activists do not fight for men's rights, they only fight against feminism. Worse yet, they only fight against some parts of feminism, not the founding principles themselves, and they throw men under the bus in their fight against certain parts of feminism. And now let's take it a step further and ask, how are you people fighting feminism? Are you punching them? Are you shooting them? Are you pushing to have them arrested? No, you're tweeting at them. Well, by all means continue to have your meme wars and toss around your statistics and do your best to outsnark each other in a 140-character tweet, and be sure to let me know when that defeats feminism. Currently, a man spends his life seeking out women, finally gets a woman's approval, marries her, works all day long to support her, has children with her, works even harder to support both her and her children. In this arrangement, if they should no longer get along, and the arguing and fighting doesn't get resolved, it ends in divorce. In divorce, the woman will usually get the children, and thus all other assets the man has, for the greater good of the kids, and the man will have to continue paying for those children. A man's life is utterly destroyed by this. And of course, it is very rare that he can pay enough money to keep her and the children alive, so socialism steps in to keep her and the children alive. You people blame this entire outcome on feminism, and you're mostly right, but here's the real bit of irony, it's the part of feminism the great bulk of you refuse to actually fight that is behind this. In order to stop half the marriages or around that number, from ending in divorce, you are going to have to turn wives into the lawful property of their husbands. Make it so wives can't vote, can't own property, and aren't allowed to work without a husband's permission, may not lawfully file for divorce without husband's consent, that is only husbands can file for divorce. Make it so that by law, children are by default the property of their father. If you are not prepared to implement that hardcore Islamic-style patriarchy, you are not fighting feminism in any meaningful way. The problem here is not just feminism, it's actually old-school patriarchy or traditionalism, attempting to function in a post-feminism culture, that is causing the problem. You are not willing to undo actual feminism, in order to make traditionalism work. The great crisis we have, being called feminism, is at its core, the failure of traditionalism. I know your knee-jerk response is to go on and on about the tender years doctrine and feminized bias court system, but put that argument down for just a moment. I want you to imagine a scenario. A husband and wife are arguing and not getting along any longer, not just for a day, a week, or a month, but over a course of a few years. The fighting and arguing become worse and worse. Each one is making life unbearable for the other. There is nothing but cold shoulders in that house. This is seriously hurting the children. Every minute in that house, for everyone, feels like walking over a minefield. Every question, every action, threatens to set off the powder keg of explosive anger between the husband and wife. Every little thing threatens to start with the moodiness, the snarking, the yelling, the screaming, the furniture banging, while the kids just run to their bedrooms and cry. Obviously, for the sake of the children, a divorce needs to happen. Sure, there is expensive couples therapy, and let me know when that's ever fixed a marriage. At any rate, it's time for a divorce. For the sake of the children at least, it is time they split. Now, the woman is a traditional housewife, no education, no skills, no job history, nowhere to go. The husband is the one with the master's degree and the 8 years worth of electrical engineering or whatever have you, that pays all the family's bills. Remove all the nonsense of a tender years doctrine, which is no longer in effect anyhow, and tell me, where should the children go? Who should they live with? If they live with daddy, who's going to watch them? He has to work between 40 and 60 hours a week, and you tradcans in the MRM have said umpteen million times that daycare and babysitters will ruin a child. So clearly a biological parent has to be up their ass 24/7 according to you tradcans. And as I said, the father has to work, so clearly the children are going to the wife. And how is the wife/mother going to support the child? She has no job or education or work history because she is a traditionalist gal and has been a stay-at-home mother. And worse yet, she can't get a job because according to you she needs to be up the kids' asses 24/7, because babysitters and daycare will give the kid autism, or turn them into psychopaths or whatever your excuses are. So again, I ask, how is she going to pay for the children? There are only 4 possibilities. 1. The ex-husband pays it all, her house, utilities, and food for her and the kids, just like when he was married. 2. The state pays it all, lots of taxes. 3. The ex-husband pays the highest amount possible, and what is not possible, but still needed, is picked up by the taxpayer. 4. The kids are taken from both and placed into foster care. Well, if we go with number 4, that's the most expensive for the taxpayer, and would be all of the horrors of daycare times 100, so clearly that's not an option. We go with number 3. Gentlemen, feminism need not exist for number 3 to be the outcome. Now this can still be blamed on feminism, if we consider that feminism grants women the right to own property in a marriage, the right to vote, and makes it completely illegal for a husband to physically discipline his moody wife. But funny thing is, you're not fighting against that shit, so you're not willing to erect a strong Islamic-style patriarchy to actually make traditionalism work, and you're not willing to abandon traditionalism like MGTOW, so you're stuck in a loop of committing the same bad behavior over and over, and just blaming it all on feminism. You people refuse to look in the mirror and see your own mistakes. You don't have the courage to seriously put women in their place Islamic Sharia law style, nor have you the courage to get up and leave the traditional institution of being married with children. You won't fix things to return us to the past, and you won't fix things to make a better future. You're stuck between these two states, just standing there and effectively crying. You call your crying fighting feminists, but you're not fighting, you're crying, and it must really suck for you people. It must be a depressing life. You're too much of a pussy begging white knight still after all these years, still fighting for female approval, so consumed by your need to gain female approval and look all politically correct for the cameras, that you won't push for a traditional patriarchy. You haven't the courage to scream down with women's right to vote. That would make you look like a misogynist. Women wouldn't give you their approval, so you're too spineless to push for that traditional patriarchy. But you hate us MGTOW. You won't join or support the efforts of a movement that advocates walking away, abandoning this gynocentric machine. You don't want to fix the machine. You don't want to abandon the machine. You just keep feeding it while bitching about it. And that is why the men's rights movement is futile. Look, I understand the value in arguing feminists. It has a cathartic effect. It forces them to acknowledge we exist, MRM/MGTOW, and it teaches other men it's okay to stand up to these people. But don't fool yourself into thinking you can just argue feminists and one day you will win and women everywhere will just stop it. And in your worship of women, you refuse to see the bulk of women's natural bad behavior for what it is. You just keep pointing and yelling feminism. Take this man-spreading thing they're griping about. That's not feminism. That's just women nagging, bitching about street harassment. That's just women bitching, griping, complaining and nagging about men. That's just what women do. And sure, most women bitching about these things do call themselves feminists. But feminism, over the past 120 years or so, has eventually morphed into a word to describe entitled women nagging and bitching about men. And so this thing you're fighting, this women's nagging, good luck fighting that. You just keep blogging and tweeting and rebutting their nagging and let me know when that puts an end to women's nagging. And yes, all women nag, all of them, every goddamn one of them, even Diana Davison, which is pretty hardcore, and MGTOW approved, even she fucking nags. I took a few months off of video making and all she did was nag me to make a video. Nagged me for 3 fucking months. Hell, she even uploaded a video, and with her upload comment said, yeah, she fucking nags. She nagged me for 3 friggin' months and she didn't even fuck me. Being nagged by a woman for 3 months and not getting sex out of her, for crying out loud, she might as well have been my wife. I spent 3 months knowing what you married men go through. Anyhow, all women, even the good ones, they nag. It's a part of womanhood. It's natural, like birds chirping and cats purring. Even the best women nag. I loved my grandmother, God rest her soul, but she fucking nagged. She nagged her daughters, she nagged her son, she nagged me, she nagged her husband. She was truly an awesome human being, but she nagged. And the women who aren't really awesome, your average woman, they nag, and bitch, and whine, and complain, a lot. Most of the shit that is feminism is just women nagging, bitching, whining, and complaining. You people won't even realize the great bulk of what you fight is just women being women. You keep blaming feminism, and you blame feminism on socialism, or Marxism. For crying out loud, women didn't need Karl Marx to learn how to nag, bitch, whine, and complain. All they needed for that was a set of ovaries. Women have always been ungrateful, entitled, and just nagged, whined, bitched, cried, moaned, and complained. But now they can vote. So politicians listen to their nagging, whining, bitching, moaning and complaining. So now things like men leaving the toilet seat up, or whistling at them in public, or taking up too much room on the subway, becomes a political issue. Women's instinctive nagging turned political is called feminism. You observe women's bad behavior and bad attitudes, and act like the feminist movement caused this to happen. It's a lot like the people who see violence in the real world, and then cite video games and television and music as the cause. You need to understand, there are violent video games, because people like violence. There is violent music lyrics because people like violence. There are violent movies, because people like violence. People like violence because they're people. It's just an aspect of human nature. Boys are horny and masturbate. The anti-porn movement swears this is caused by the porn industry, but no. In actuality, porn is not the basis for men's sexual need. The sexual need is there by biology. The porn is just there to satiate the biological need. Women act dramatic, always gossiping, manipulating, scheming, and picking fights to have their emotional roller coaster drama needs met. Notice how they also watch TV shows and movies filled with screaming and fighting and crisis and backstabbing and drama. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. The movies are there because this is what the female mind likes. These movies do not cause the female mind to be this way. Feminism is not a movement that causes women to think and feel the way they do about men. It's the fact that this is how women think and feel, that makes the feminist movement exist. Again, you can no more blame men's high sex drives on pornography than you can blame women's misandry on feminism. It's men's high sex drive that built the porn industry, and women's misandry that built feminism. Think about football, soccer, rugby, basketball, and so on. All these major sports feature men competing over who gets to have a ball. If you can picture a group of toddlers all reaching for the same toy and competing over who gets to play with it, this is men. Men are people who enjoy competing for something. Women compete in their own way, but men are very much into the athletic competition. It is not all these major playoffs and sporting events that make young boys want to go out and play physical sports. It's that males have an inborn desire to physically compete, that manufactures such things as sports. Even if all schools abandoned sports, even if the television stations quit broadcasting sporting events, little boys and young men in their prime will still be making games out of physically competing. Likewise with feminism. Feminism is the outcome of women being women, like football is the outcome of men being men. Anyhow, you MRAs, you won't attempt to reinstitute a strong patriarchal system, and you won't abandon the institution of marriage and children, so you're just stuck feeding the machine and griping about it. If you were fighting to put women in their place by forcing them into servitude, re-establishing man as ruler of the nuclear family, under the law, maybe even going Sharia law up in here, to establish a forced traditional order, I wouldn't support that, but I wouldn't feel all that inclined to fight it. I could look at what you are doing and say, well, I may not agree with this agenda, but hey, they're trying something. But you people aren't trying anything. Furthermore, you're discouraging those who are. Any effort to actually reform things, you people would shout down as sexist against women, or claim it's Marxist. And that's all you people do. Bitch about problems and shoot down anyone that attempts a solution. Because again, everything is either misogyny, or it's socialist, or it doesn't conform to your traditional nuclear family values and therefore is just like the feminists. John the other contributed something really valuable to this split between the MRM and MGTOW. He referred to what is going on here as reforming versus abandoning. The traditionalist MRM wants to reform, MGTOW wants to abandon, and I think it was a brilliant way of looking at the core of what is taking place. However, what exactly is it you people are trying to reform? If I didn't know better, I'd say it's women. What I see so much of in the MRM is MRAs bitching that women should stop doing this, women should start doing this. Okay, look, we live in a world where women win, and men lose. In that scenario, why would women change a damn thing? If anyone here is going to have to change, it's men. MGTOW is men making that personal change. MRAs sit around expecting others to change around them. Put it simply, women are not going to change. They have no motivation. Some women choose to bash men, others choose to exploit men. They're not going to stop, because they don't have to. That's why, so all the tweets of fury in the world, aren't going to convince advantaged women to stop doing the things that advantage them. Because you're still in pussy beggar mode, because you are still white knights begging for their approval. You have this image of women as being soft, angelic, delicate creatures, full of love, respect, loyalty, and compassion. That's the fantasy about women you have. And when you open your eyes, and you don't see women behaving this way, you just scream feminism. You believe feminism is this really nasty idea started by some Marxists, and this pathology has infected Western women, and either we need to find a good foreign woman, or just defeat feminism, smash Marxism, vote right-wing, or in the case of some of you, defeat the Jew, and that will magically drive the evil satanic feminism out of women, and women will return to a natural state of being wispy flowery angels filled with love, compassion, and respect, like they used to be, back in the olden days. like it appeared in old black and white movies, the way it must have been because that's how it looked on Little House on the Prairie. I hate to burst your bubble, but it's nonsense. Foreign women act just like Western women. Women in the olden days acted just like modern women. Or at least, these women will behave like modern Western women when they are allowed to. Women are as greedy as men, maybe even more so. Women will hurt men as much as you allow them. Women will exploit men as much as they are allowed to. Women will man-shame and bash men as much as they are allowed. In many foreign countries, husbands can use physical force to keep their wives under control, and that reduces most of the marital fighting. In the olden days, even in America, husbands were never technically allowed to hit their wives, but unless you roughed them up really bad, it was generally overlooked. Women will behave when they are forced to behave. Sometimes that force is a husband's use of physical discipline. Sometimes that force is laws restricting their choices and forcing their subservience. Sometimes that force is a strong misogynist culture. Sometimes that force is a small combination of all three, but again, you white knights wouldn't dare advocate for such things because that's misogyny, and you won't tolerate that shit. You people remind me of a group of people complaining that there is no bacon, but simultaneously restricting anyone from killing a pig. Your problem is self-created. You people won't abandon your pursuit of bacon, nor will you bring yourself to actually killing pigs. So you just sit there complaining ad nauseum about there being no bacon, and realize that even though women can be made to behave under force, that is all they are doing, behaving. The fact they resent your maleness, believe themselves the center of the universe, feel entitled, that is still there, because their brains are still female, but force, of some kind, can make the great bulk of them at least stifle that long enough to behave in a society that will not tolerate their misbehavior. But again, that's slaughtering the pig, and you won't allow that. So, you MRAs, stuck wanting women, wanting them to behave, but too white knight to demand we be a society that implements the forcing of this obedient behavior. You'll neither abandon nor reform. You'll just stand still and cry about the situation, and continue feeding the machine. You'll marry a woman, give her children, pay for it all, what few men can afford to at least, and then act shocked when she leaves you for a man that can provide better, or leaves you when you fall and cannot provide. You'll place your head on the chopping block, and act shocked, and scream feminism, when they bring down the axe. You'll go down that road, get burned, and encourage young men to follow this path, and you'll give these young men such worthy advice like just got to find the right one, and if he should doubt this, remind him not all women are like that, and go find yourself a foreign woman, and don't let your wife get influenced by feminists, and you got to be firm with your woman, tell her no. I say this, no man should be marrying or having children in this climate, and if enough men abandon these practices, it may very well hurt population. I also have no doubt that if it ever got that severe, this would actually open the door to new laws and attitudes to protect men from women. Laws to ensure that his children some way somehow belong to him and to him only. Laws like only husbands can file for divorce, or laws written right on the books that children are to default to the custody of the father. The men's rights movement will fail for the following reasons. 1. You are too weak to abandon. 2. You are too afraid of change. 3. You will not fix anything if it involves upsetting women. You won't fix the machine. You won't change the function of the machine. You won't abandon the machine. You'll just keep fueling it, and crying about it, and scolding everyone that either tries to fix, change, or abandon it. This is why you have been, are now, and always will be, pointless, futile, and fail.